The Israeli military says it will continue to allow residents of northern Gaza to move to safer areas in the south. It says hundreds of thousands of residents have moved already. This as Israeli troops are ready for a ground assault on the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip. Israel has vowed to annihilate the militant group Hamas in retaliation for its unprecedented attacks against its civilians. Israel says about 1,300 people were killed in the onslaught last week. It responded by subjecting Gaza to the most intense bombardment it had ever seen, putting the small enclave under total siege and destroying much of its infrastructure. Authorities in Gaza said that more than 2,300 people had been killed, a quarter of them children, and nearly 10,000 wounded. We cross to SABC's news correspondent Ross Cullen, who is live for us from Tel Aviv. Ross, thank you. Is it still the stance of Israel that it will go in, as it said earlier, by sea, by land, by air, and any idea of when that will be?
Yeah, just looking down at the latest statement from the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, they have said that they are working to lay the groundwork, removing as many threats as possible on the ground in Gaza from the air to allow the most effective ground operations by their troops. So this preparation is ongoing. We know there are hundreds of tanks on the border at the moment, tens of thousands of troops massing as well. And no exact time frame given for when these operations will commence, but they are certainly well underway, and they are expanding their preparations for this widely expected ground invasion into northern Gaza for Israel to carry out what it says are its ambitions to crush, destroy Hamas and wipe Hamas off the face of the earth. Now, in terms of the situation in Gaza at the moment, the United States says that Israel has said it's turned the water back on for the southern part of the Gaza Strip to try to keep encouraging people to move from the north of the Palestinian territory to the south because of those widely expected ground operations in the north, which the Israeli Defense Forces will say that will become shortly in the near future an active combat zone. So people are moving to the south. But it has been this humanitarian crisis of trying to move hundreds of thousands of people. More than 1.1 million people came under that order to move from the north of Gaza to the south of Gaza. But the situation is terrible wherever you are inside the Gaza Strip. Palestinians cannot simply leave. Israel controls everything that goes into and out of Gaza, apart from a very short border with Egypt. And Egypt has also had a blockade in place there. There are some discussions underway, though, in Egypt at the moment. That's where the United States Secretary of State is, Antony Blinken, holding talks with the Egyptian president about a possible solution, perhaps to try to stop regional actors getting involved, stop an expansion of the conflict, and also perhaps to open up a humanitarian corridor.
There was also reports yesterday around letting out foreigners into Egypt, that was being worked out with Israel as well. Do you know whether that Rafah crossing has been used, whether foreigners have been allowed to leave? And is that part of why perhaps Israel didn't go in after the first 24-hour window that it gave, or the next 6-hour window?
Well, America has been ironclad in its support for the United States. There's currently a bipartisan delegation here in Tel Aviv, led by the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who say we are going to give Israel everything they need to respond to this, quote, monstrous attack. But there are some 600 Americans inside, Palestinian Americans inside Gaza, and also Palestinian British citizens and other dual nationals as well. So that potentially could be a factor at play if there are going to be Palestinian Americans in the line of fire from one of America's allies, Israel. So that could be one of the factors at play in those discussions between Antony Blinken and the Egyptian president at the moment. We know that the Secretary of State is due back here in Israel on Monday for further talks about the ongoing situation and about how best to respond. Antony Blinken, speaking a little bit earlier, did say that we believe in a path of collaboration and affirmation. Hamas Hamas only believes in a path of violence, terror, death and destruction, and we believe that an overwhelming majority of people in the whole region do want a path of positivity. We are here to work constructively together, holding talks with the Egyptian president.
Ross, very quickly, just because time is against us, Israel has faced huge civilian casualties. There was a mass slaughter there, but huge concern now for civilians in Gaza. Are you able to gauge, looking at media reports, what people are saying on the streets? Do you believe that most Israelis are in support of this ground offensive or not?
Yes, there's a national unity government, and there has been these ongoing protests against Benjamin Netanyahu's controversial judicial reforms. Those have been paused indefinitely since the killing, since those brutal murders of men, women, children and babies, since the rape of women, since the abduction of dozens of people as well last Saturday, so just over a week ago, in the villages of southern Israel at a music festival, in the kibbutzes as well, the shared communal villages, those shocking images, the video that was coming out of there, the torture and the slaughter, people having to go through the most horrendous conditions and events when Hamas broke into and out of through the security fence that surrounds the Palestinian territory. So 1,300 people have died here in Israel since the start of this, and more than 2,200 people have died in Gaza in those retaliatory airstrikes which have been going on now from Israel for more than a week.
All right, thank you very much. That was Cullen live from Tel Aviv. We'll keep you updated.